here we go. First question. Is it a bad idea to seek a new job opportunity as a corporate executive with the pending recession? So it really depends, is what I'll say. It depends on kind of the industry that you're in. It depends on kind of the level of experience that you have, and kind of, if you're in a position that is highly sought after and there are very few people who do what you do, you're going to have tremendous job security kind of no matter the economic cycle. If you work in, say, like mortgage lending, that's a highly cyclical industry. And, when there are big spikes in volume, they ramp up hiring. And right now in the current environment, there's likely to be very low volume activity in mortgages for several years, as long as interest rates remain elevated. And so making a job switch right now could be detrimental in the sense that if there are layoffs and you're a recent hire, you oftentimes are looked at as the first one to be laid off. So there's really no, I can't give you a black and white yes or no answer, because it's going to be highly dependent on your personal circumstances, the industry that you're working in, your experience level. Think of it in terms of supply and demand, right? Like if what you do, you're extremely well qualified, there are very few people who are capable of doing what you do, your scenario looks very different than if, for example, you, are an hourly employee working in a retail store there's thousands of people who can do what you do. And I don't say that to be like derogatory or degrading. It's just the facts of supply and demand within the labor market. So that's kind of the way to think about it. If a year or 2 years ago, it was sort of like there was huge demand for labor and not a lot of people willing to work, it was much easier to job switch regardless of kind of your level of experience, your education level. And so that's why you were seeing such elevated quit rates. We're starting to see that slow down significantly, just because people are nervous. And the reality is that when it comes to letting people go, one of the things that's often looked at is seniority. So people who were hired most recently have oftentimes a greater degree of likelihood of being the first to be let go. It's just kind of a reality of the situation. So it's just something I would keep in mind. In general, I would say I would be more cautious about job switching right now. And I would be more cautious, especially if you are in a more cyclical industry. And those more cyclical industries that tend to be more significantly impacted in an economic downturn include things like construction, leisure and hospitality, retail, real estate. I'm trying to think of kind of what other big ones I'm leaving out. But those tend to be more cyclical and more severely impacted in economic downturns. They also tend to have significant recoveries and their hiring picks up the most. And obviously tech right now is being impacted as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because I think there are some questions in here about that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it at least gives you some background knowledge and some framework in terms of thinking about the decision to move. Don't hear me saying like, don't switch jobs if you get some tremendous opportunity, but I would be more cautious and I would look to potentially in whatever contract you're signing up to, ask for some element of job security, right? Like make sure you negotiate maybe more attractive severance terms if you're worried that 6 months from now, if their situation is different, that you might be laid off. Don't be afraid, especially in like a corporate executive position, like don't be afraid to ask for company financials. Like be willing to sign an NDA agreement in order to get some inside information in order to determine like, what is the financial stability of this company? Things like that. Just some food for thought and some data points to look at and ask for when making a decision like that. Okay,